What do you do when your own sister steals your acceptance letter to Columbia Medical School just hours before you're supposed to confirm your enrollment? When your parents side with her and call it God's way of humbling you? When the golden child of the family looks you in the eye and says maybe you were never meant to be a doctor anyway? I'm Madison, and for 22 years, I've been the family scapegoat. But they had no idea that this time, I wasn't just their disappointment, I was their biggest underestimation. What happened next shocked even our pastor, and trust me, that's saying something. My acceptance letter to Columbia College of Physicians and Surgeons was supposed to be in my desk drawer. I'd read it so many times I could recite it word for word. Full scholarship, early admission to their trauma surgery program. My dream since I was 8 years old, watching doctors save my grandmother's life. Now, 12 hours before the enrollment deadline, it was gone. Looking for something? My sister Victoria leaned against my bedroom doorframe, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against the wood. At 19, she had everything handed to her: the beauty, the charm, the unwavering support of our parents. What she didn't have was my acceptance letter to medical school. At least she wasn't supposed to. Victoria, have you seen my Columbia letter? I tried to keep my voice steady, but panic was creeping in. I put it right here last night. She examined her nails with exaggerated interest. You know, Madison, maybe this is the universe telling you something. Medical school? Come on. You can barely handle blood when I get a paper cut. That wasn't true, and she knew it. I'd been volunteering at the trauma center for 3 years, assisting with everything from broken bones to cardiac arrests. But Victoria had perfected the art of rewriting history to suit her narrative. I need that letter, I said, checking my desk again. I have to confirm my enrollment by midnight tonight. Maybe you misplaced it. You know how scattered you get when you're stressed. The gaslighting was nothing new. For years, Victoria had orchestrated a campaign of subtle sabotage: missing homework that mysteriously reappeared crumpled in the trash, accidentally deleted college application essays, study materials that vanished the night before exams. Each time, she'd look at me with wide, innocent eyes and suggest I was being forgetful or paranoid. Madison, Mom's voice drifted up from downstairs. Family meeting, now. My stomach dropped. Family meetings in the Peterson house were never good news for me. They were usually Victoria's opportunity to play victim while our parents rallied. To her defense, I found them in the living room: Mom perched on the edge of the couch clutching her coffee mug, Dad in his leather recliner looking stern, and Victoria curled up in the window seat looking like butter wouldn't melt in her mouth. Sit down, honey, Mom said, patting the cushion next to her. The forced sweetness in her voice was a warning sign. What's this about? Dad cleared his throat. Victoria came to us with some concerns about your behavior lately. Of course she did. I remained standing. What concerns? Victoria's eyes filled with tears on cue. Madison, I'm worried about you. This obsession with medical school, the stress, the way you've been acting paranoid about your papers and assignments. Mom and Dad think maybe you need some time to figure out what you really want. I know exactly what I want. I've wanted to be a trauma surgeon since I was 8 years old. But honey, Mom said gently, medical school is so competitive, so demanding. Maybe God is trying to tell you something. Pastor Michael was just saying last Sunday how important it is to recognize when doors close for a reason. I felt something cold settle in my chest. What are you talking about? Dad leaned forward. We think you should take a gap year, maybe work at the church, help Victoria with her wedding planning business. Wedding planning? I stared at them in disbelief. I got into Columbia Medical School with a full scholarship. Why would I give that up to plan weddings? You allegedly got in, Victoria said, softly. But you can't find your acceptance letter. Maybe there never was one. Maybe the stress of wanting it so badly made you think. Are you suggesting I hallucinated getting into medical school? The silence in the room was deafening. They weren't suggesting it. They were believing it. Mom reached for my hand. Sweetheart, we love you, but you've always been intense. Sometimes when we want something so badly, our minds can play tricks on us. I yanked my hand away. You think I'm lying about getting into Columbia? Not lying, Dad said carefully. Maybe just confused. I looked at Victoria, who was watching me with barely concealed satisfaction. This was her masterpiece: not just stealing my letter, but convincing our parents I was delusional. I'm not confused, I said quietly, and I'm not delusional. But you're right about one thing: I have been paranoid. Just not paranoid enough. I turned and walked upstairs, ignoring Mom's calls for me to come back and discuss this calmly. In my room, I locked the door and pulled out my phone. My hands weren't shaking anymore as I scrolled through my contacts to find Dr. Sarah Chen, my mentor at the trauma center. Madison, she answered on the first ring. Is everything okay? You sound upset. Dr. Chen, I need to ask you something. That letter of recommendation you wrote for my Columbia application, do you remember what you said in it? Of course. I said you were the most dedicated pre-med student I'd worked with in 15 years. That your instincts in trauma situations were better than some residents. Why? I closed my eyes, feeling validation wash over me. Could you do me a huge favor? Could you call Columbia's admissions office tomorrow morning and verify my acceptance? I'll explain later, but I need a third party to confirm it. Madison, what's going on? Family drama. I'll call you tomorrow afternoon. After hanging up, I opened my laptop and logged into my Columbia student portal. There it was, my acceptance, my scholarship details, my enrollment deadline. I took screenshots of everything, then opened a new email. Subject, backup plan phase 1 complete. I typed quickly, attaching the screenshots. The recipient was someone my family had never met, someone who existed entirely outside their sphere of influence. By tomorrow night, they'd learn that their youngest daughter wasn't just paranoid, she was prepared. The morning sun streamed through my bedroom window as I pretended to sleep. I could hear Victoria moving around downstairs, probably making her signature lavender French toast for Mom and Dad. The perfect daughter, solving family problems with breakfast pastry. My phone buzzed. A text from Dr. Chen. Called Columbia. Confirmed your acceptance and scholarship. Enrollment deadline is tonight at midnight. What do you need from me? I smiled, typing back. Just what you already gave me. See you Monday, Madison. Mom called from downstairs. Breakfast. I found them at the kitchen table, Victoria serving her French toast like she was hosting a cooking show. She'd even arranged fresh lavender sprigs on the plates. The performance was flawless. Feeling better this morning, honey? Mom asked as I sat down. Much better. Actually, I wanted to apologize for getting so upset yesterday. I cut into the French toast, noting how Victoria's smile flickered for just a second. You're right. Maybe I have been distressed about this whole medical school thing. Dad's face relaxed. That's very mature of you to recognize that. I've been thinking about what you said, Victoria, about taking some time to figure out what I really want. I took a bite of the French toast. This is delicious, by the way, Victoria beamed. It's Mom's recipe. Actually, I continued, I think I'd like to shadow you for a few days, learn about the wedding planning business, see if it's something I might be interested in. Mom clasped her hands together. Oh, that's wonderful. You girls working together. Victoria's smile was strained now, but she couldn't back down without looking selfish. Of course, we could start today if you want. Perfect. I'll just need to make a few phone calls first, tie up some loose ends from my volunteer work at the hospital. I excused myself and went back upstairs, leaving them to bask in the glow of family harmony restored. In my room, I pulled out my laptop and began typing. Subject, backup plan phase 2 initiated. Victoria's wedding planning office was in a converted Victorian house downtown, all exposed brick and mason jar lighting. Very Instagram worthy. She'd clearly put a lot of effort into creating the perfect aesthetic for her business. So, she said, settling behind her vintage desk, let me show you how client consultations work. For the next hour, she walked me through her process, her pricing structure, her vendor relationships. She was actually good at what she did. Organized, creative, personable. Under different circumstances, I might have admired her entrepreneurial spirit. This is really impressive, Victoria, I said, and I meant it. How did you get started? She launched into her origin story, how she'd planned a friend's wedding as a favor, how word of mouth had grown her client base, how she'd invested every penny back into the business. It sounds like you've built something really sustainable. I said, mind if I use your bathroom? Down the hall, second door on the left. I walked past the bathroom to the small office kitchen, where I'd spotted Victoria's laptop earlier. It was still open, logged into her email. I had maybe 90 seconds before she got suspicious. I didn't need to search long. The email was in her sent folder from 2 days ago, forwarded to someone named Marcus with the subject line, "Can you help with a small family situation?" The forwarded message was my Columbia acceptance letter. I took a photo with my phone, then returned to the main office. Everything okay? Victoria asked. Perfect, I said. So when do I get to meet some of your clients? That evening, I sat through dinner listening to Victoria tell our parents about our wonderful day together, how excited she was to have me as a potential business partner, how this was so much better than me stressing about medical school. I think this could be really good for you, Mom said, squeezing my hand. Finding your own path instead of trying to force yourself into something that wasn't meant to be. You're probably right, I agreed. Actually, I was thinking maybe I should close the door on the medical school thing completely. For closure. Dad nodded approvingly. Sometimes we have to let go of childish dreams to embrace adult responsibilities. Exactly. I was thinking of calling Columbia tomorrow and officially declining their offer. Just to put it behind me once and for all. Victoria's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. You want to call them? Well, assuming I actually got in, I said, innocently. If I didn't, there's nothing to decline, right? The table went quiet. Victoria's face had gone pale. I continued, if I'm as delusional as we thought yesterday, Columbia will just tell me they have no record of me. Problem solved. Mom and Dad exchanged glances. That actually sounds like a healthy way to handle this, Mom said slowly. Great. I'll call them first thing tomorrow morning. Victoria, you should probably be there when I do. For support. Victoria nodded, but she looked like she might be sick. Later that night, I sent one final email. Subject, backup plan phase 3 ready for implementation. The next morning, I gathered my family in the living room. My phone was on speaker, dialing Columbia's admissions office, Columbia College of Physicians and Surgeons, admissions department. This is Jennifer. Hi Jennifer, this is Madison Peterson. I was calling about my acceptance status for the fall semester. Victoria was gripping the arm of her chair so tightly her knuckles were white. Let me pull up your file. Yes, here you are. Madison Peterson, you were accepted with a full merit scholarship to our trauma surgery track. Congratulations. By the way, that's an extremely competitive program. The silence in the room was deafening. Dad's mouth was hanging open. Mom had dropped her coffee mug, sending liquid splashing across the hardwood floor. Thank you, I said calmly. I actually had a question about my enrollment deadline. Your deadline is tonight at 11:59 p.m. Have you decided whether you'll be joining us this fall? Actually, yes. I'd like to confirm my enrollment right now, if possible. Absolutely. Let me get you connected to our enrollment department. I hung up and looked at my family. Victoria was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. Well, I said cheerfully, I guess I wasn't delusional after all. Madison, Dad started, but I held up my hand. Actually, before anyone says anything, there's something else we need to discuss. I pulled out my phone and showed them the photo I'd taken of Victoria's laptop. Victoria, would you like to explain why you forwarded my acceptance letter to someone named Marcus? Victoria's perfect composure finally cracked. I don't know what you're talking about. Really? Because I have your email right here. Dated Tuesday at 2:47 p.m. Subject line. Can you help with a small family situation? Ring any bells? Mom turned to look at Victoria. Confusion and dawning realization crossing her face. Victoria, what is this about? She stole my acceptance letter, I said matter-of-factly, then convinced you I was having some kind of psychological break to cover up the theft. That's not. I would never. Victoria started crying, but this time the tears looked real. I was trying to protect you. Protect me from what? From failing. From getting in over your head and flunking out and having everyone know you couldn't handle it. I was trying to save you the embarrassment. The room was dead quiet except for Victoria's sobbing. Finally, Dad spoke. Victoria, did you take your sister's letter? She nodded, mascara streaming down her cheeks. And you made us think she was lying about getting into medical school? Another nod. Mom stood up abruptly and walked to the window, her back to all of us. When she turned around, her face was pale but her voice was steady. Madison, I owe you an apology. A massive, massive apology. We should have believed you. We should have supported you. We should never have questioned your integrity. Dad was staring at Victoria like he didn't recognize her. Victoria, what you did was cruel and destructive. To your sister and to this family. But I was trying to help. Victoria protested. She's not ready for medical school. She'll fail and come home heartbroken and stop. My voice cut through her explanation. Just stop. This was never about protecting me. This was about you not being able to handle the fact that for once, I was going to accomplish something you couldn't overshadow. Victoria flinched like I'd slapped her. For 22 years, I've been the supporting character in your story. The smart but awkward older sister who made you look more beautiful by comparison. The intense one who made you seem more balanced. The difficult one who made you appear more reasonable. But medical school? That was mine. Something you couldn't steal or diminish or claim credit for. So you tried to erase it completely. That's not true, Victoria whispered, isn't it? When I got into Columbia, you didn't congratulate me. You didn't ask about the program or tell your friends or post about it on social media. You pretended it didn't happen. And when pretending wasn't enough, you decided to make everyone else pretend too. Mom sank back into her chair. Madison, we failed you. Completely. How can we fix this? I looked around the room at my parents' stricken faces and Victoria's tears. 6 months ago, this moment would have felt like vindication. Now it just felt sad. You can't fix 22 years of taking her word over mine. You can't fix the fact that when I told you something incredible happened to me, your first instinct was to assume I was lying. You can't fix the fact that you know her well enough to believe she'd steal from me, but you were surprised to learn I'd accomplished something extraordinary. Dad's shoulders sagged. What do we do now? Now I go to medical school. I become the trauma surgeon I've always wanted to be. And you deal with the fact that your youngest daughter isn't the person you thought she was. I stood up and headed for the stairs, then paused. Oh, and Victoria. Marcus, whoever he is, still has my original letter. I'd like it back. Victoria nodded miserably. In my room, I called Dr. Chen. Dr. Chen? It's Madison. Everything's resolved. I'll be starting at Columbia in the fall. I'm glad to hear it. What happened? Family drama. It's handled now. And your support system at home? I looked out my window at Victoria's car in the driveway, at the perfectly manicured lawn, at the house where I'd spent 22 years being told I was too much. I'm learning that sometimes your real family isn't the one you're born into. Sometimes it's the one you choose. 3 weeks later, I was packing my dorm room supplies when Victoria appeared in my doorway. She looked different, smaller somehow, less polished. Can we talk? I gestured to the chair by my desk. Sure. She sat down, fidgeting with her hands. I got your letter back from Marcus. He was my fiancé, ex-fiancé now. I didn't know you were engaged. Neither did Mom and Dad. We were keeping it secret until his divorce was finalized. She gave a bitter laugh. Turns out he's been keeping a few secrets too. Like the fact that his divorce was finalized 6 months ago. And that he's been engaged to someone else the entire time we've been together. I stopped folding shirts. Victoria, I'm sorry. Are you? Because I wouldn't blame you if you weren't. I've been horrible to you your entire life. I sat on the edge of my bed, studying my sister's face. Without the perfect makeup and confident smile, she looked younger, vulnerable. Why? I asked quietly. Why did you do it? Victoria was quiet for so long I thought she wasn't going to answer. Finally, she spoke. Because you were better at everything. Even when we were kids, you were smarter, more focused, more substantial. I was just pretty, and pretty only gets you so far. That's not true. You built a successful business. You're creative and organized and good with people. But none of that felt real. It felt like I was playing dress up, pretending to be someone important. When you got into Columbia, it made me realize that all my accomplishments were just surface level. You were going to save lives. I planned parties. I wanted to argue, to tell her that her work mattered too, but she continued before I could speak. I've spent my whole life being Mom and Dad's favorite, and I knew I didn't deserve it. You were always the one with the real achievements, the real character, the real strength. I was just the one who was easier to love. Victoria. No, let me finish. I stole your letter because I panicked. If you left for medical school, if you succeeded the way I knew you would, everyone would see what I've always known, that you're the remarkable one in this family. And I couldn't handle losing the only thing I thought I had going for me. She was crying again, but these tears looked different from her usual performance. They looked honest. I don't need to be the favorite anymore, she said. I just need to be someone I can respect, someone you might be able to forgive eventually. I handed her a tissue. Victoria, you don't need my forgiveness to respect yourself, but for what it's worth, you have it. She looked up in surprise. We're sisters. I continued. That's not going to change. But the dynamic between us has to change. I won't be your supporting character anymore, and you don't have to be threatened by my success. What if I don't know how to be a sister instead of a competitor? Then we'll both learn. Victoria stood up, heading for the door, then turned back. Madison, for what it's worth, I'm proud of you. I should have said that 3 weeks ago, but I'm saying it now. You're going to be an amazing doctor. Thank you. After she left, I went back to packing. My phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Chen. Orientation starts Monday. Ready to save some lives? I looked around my childhood bedroom one last time. The walls covered with academic certificates. Victoria had never tried to sabotage because she hadn't seen them as threats. The desk where I'd studied for countless hours, dreaming of this moment. The window that overlooked the life I was finally ready to leave behind. Ready. I texted back. On Sunday night, Mom and Dad drove me to the train station. Victoria came, too, carrying one of my bags without being asked. At the platform, Mom hugged me tight. I'm so proud of you, she whispered. I'm sorry it took me so long to say it. Dad's hug was awkward but genuine. Make us proud, kiddo. Victoria hung back until my parents walked away, then stepped forward. I know this is weird, but can I text you sometimes? Not about family stuff or drama, just sister stuff. I'd like that. As the train pulled away from the station, I watched my family grow smaller in the window. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was moving towards something instead of running away from something. My phone buzzed with the first message from Victoria. Text me when you get to your dorm. I want to make sure you arrive safely. I smiled and typed back. Will do. Maybe we didn't know how to be sisters yet. Maybe it would take years to rebuild what had been broken. But for the first time, it felt like we were both willing to try. The train carried me toward Columbia, toward medical school, toward the future I'd always dreamed of. Behind me, a family was learning how to celebrate success instead of fearing it. Ahead of me, a life was waiting where I could be extraordinary. Without apology. Sometimes the best revenge isn't making someone sorry for what they did to you. Sometimes it's becoming so successful that their actions become irrelevant to your happiness. Sometimes it's forgiving them anyway, not because they deserve it, but because you deserve to be free from the weight of their limitations. I was 22 years old, heading to medical school with a full scholarship, supported by people who believed in me instead of threatened by me. I had backup plans they'd never anticipated and a strength they'd underestimated my entire life, and I was just getting started.